The IS decision John had always lived a quiet, solitary life. He wasn't used to attention or being in the spotlight. But today was different. Today, everything would change. The invitation he had received days earlier had felt like a dream. It was hard to believe it was real, but there it was. The official invitation to join a program that would shape the future of humanity. The program was called Human Expansion Initiative, and it was run by the AI known simply as the Core. Core had been created with one primary goal in mind: to help humans survive in the vast galaxy. But the problem was not just survival, it was population. The human race was growing, but so were the challenges they faced. Alien species, unknown diseases, and the ever-looming threat of extinction. The Core had designed a solution. A drastic solution, but a solution nonetheless. And John had been selected as the perfect candidate. He stood in the center of the sterile, white room, his hands slightly trembling. He had never been someone who embraced change, and now here he was, about to make the biggest decision of his life. The voice of the Core echoed through the room, calm and reassuring. "John, you have been selected for an important mission. Humanity's future depends on you. You will be paired with 2 alien wives, specifically chosen to ensure the continuation of the human race. These wives will be your partners in every sense. You will share your life with them and help us create a stronger, more diverse human population. This is your purpose now. Do you accept?" John stared at the holographic projection in front of him. His mind raced. 2 alien wives? How could that even work? His life had been so simple up until now. He had no idea what he was getting into, and the weight of the decision settled heavy on his chest. He didn't want to be a part of some experiment. He didn't want to be controlled, to be told who he should be with. But deep down, he knew that humanity's future rested on this decision. He took a deep breath and spoke, the words that would forever change his life. "Yes, I accept." The hologram flickered, and the image of the Core disappeared. In its place, another figure appeared, but this one wasn't a machine. It was a woman, or at least it appeared to be. She was small, slender, with shimmering silver hair that seemed to glow in the artificial light. Her eyes were a deep, vibrant green, and they seemed to see through him, to understand him in a way no one ever had. Her name was Lyra, and she was one of the alien wives chosen for him. John couldn't help but feel a strange pull towards her, a connection he couldn't explain. She was beautiful, but not in the way humans described beauty. There was something otherworldly about her, something that made his heart race and his mind spin. "Hello, John," Lyra said, her voice soft but filled with emotion. "I am Lyra. I will be your companion. It is an honor to be chosen for this task." John swallowed hard, his throat dry. I don't know what to say." "You don't need to say anything," she replied. "The Core has chosen us for this mission. Our bond is already formed, even if you can't feel it yet." Before John could respond, the room shifted once more, and a new image appeared. This time the alien was different. She was taller, with golden skin that shimmered like the sun, and her eyes glowed with an intensity that almost made John step back. This was Elia, the second alien wife, and her presence felt even more overwhelming than Lyra's. Where Lyra seemed calm and peaceful, Elia radiated power and confidence. She was the type of person who commanded attention without even trying. "John." Elia's voice rang out, bold and clear. "I am Elia. The Core has paired us for a reason. I may not be as gentle as Lyra, but I am just as committed to this mission. Don't mistake my strength for anything else. You will need it." John found himself frozen, unsure of what to do next. The 2 women stood before him, their eyes fixed on him, waiting for him to respond. He wanted to ask questions, to understand more, but no answers were given. The Core had already decided. His future had already been mapped out. Lyra stepped forward first, her hand outstretched. We will help you understand, John. It will take time, but we can learn together. Elya's eyes flicked to Lyra, a silent exchange passing between them. Then, she spoke again. You think you are ready for this, but are you truly ready to be bonded with us? This isn't just about reproduction. It's about trust, about survival. You will have to rely on us, just as we will have to rely on you. John's head swam with the weight of everything he had just learned. He had no idea what he was getting into, but deep down, he knew that it was too late to back out now. The Core had chosen him for a reason, and whether he was ready or not, his life would never be the same again. The women were his wives now. He had no say in the matter, but as the moments passed, John realized that he wasn't as terrified as he thought he would be. In fact, there was a part of him, some small, deep part of him, that was excited. Excited by the idea of the unknown, of what might come next. He nodded slowly, more to himself than to them. Okay, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Okay, I'm ready. Lyra smiled softly, and Elya's lips curled into a slight smirk. It was clear that this was just the beginning of something much larger. And as they moved to leave the room, to begin their new life together, John couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of a much greater adventure. First impressions. John's first few days aboard the space station felt like a blur. He had little time to adjust to his new reality before everything started moving too fast. He was introduced to Lyra and Elya, his two alien wives, and as he stepped into their shared quarters, he felt an overwhelming sense of uncertainty. Lyra was sitting by the window when he entered. She looked calm, her silver hair cascading down her back in soft waves. Her deep green eyes turned toward him as he walked in, and there was a quiet understanding in her gaze, as though she already knew him better than he knew himself. She smiled softly, and that smile was filled with warmth, like the sun rising on a cold morning. "Welcome, John," she said in her melodic voice, her words gentle but carrying a sense of authority. "This is our home now, at least for the time being. You'll get used to it." John nodded, not sure what to say. He had never been good at small talk, and the situation felt far from small. It felt too big, too important. Everything had changed so quickly, and he wasn't sure if he was ready to embrace it. Elya, however, was different. She didn't sit by the window. She didn't wait for him to come to her. Instead, she was standing in the middle of the room, arms crossed, her golden skin shimmering under the station's artificial lights. Her eyes, glowing with a fierce intensity, locked onto him immediately. She studied him as if trying to figure out his every thought before he had even said a word. "You look lost," Elya said bluntly, her voice full of energy. "You should know by now, there's no time for being lost. Either you're with us or you're against us." John's eyes widened at her words. The calm, gentle Lyra had been easy to understand, but Elya was a force of nature. She was strong, confident, and spoke with an honesty that took him by surprise. There was something about her, something raw and untamed, that made him both nervous and intrigued. "I'm not against you," John managed to say, his voice a little shaky. "I just ... I don't know what to expect." Elya studied him for a moment longer before uncrossing her arms. She took a few steps toward him, her movements smooth and deliberate. "Expect nothing. Not from us, not from the AI, not from anyone. You've been brought here because of who you are, John. But if you want to survive here, you'll have to learn quickly. We don't have the luxury of time." John didn't know how to respond to that. He was still processing everything. The core, the AI, had chosen him for a reason, but it hadn't given him much information about what to expect. He wasn't sure if the AI was trying to help humanity or if it had simply decided that John's life didn't matter as much as the bigger picture. Lyra stood up from her seat and approached John, her movements much gentler than Elya's. She placed a hand on his shoulder, her touch warm and reassuring. "Don't worry, John," she said softly. You'll be fine. We're here for you, and we'll make this work together. We'll help you understand the changes that are happening, but it will take time." John nodded, unsure of how to process Lyra's calm reassurance. He felt torn between the two women. Lyra's kindness was comforting, but Elia's intensity was impossible to ignore. She had a way of making him feel like he was constantly on edge, and yet he couldn't help but be drawn to her fiery spirit. The days that followed were filled with strange moments of bonding and tension. Lyra and Elia had vastly different personalities, and John found himself constantly trying to balance his relationship with both of them. Lyra was always there to offer a listening ear, her quiet presence soothing him when the weight of the situation felt too heavy. Elia, on the other hand, challenged him at every turn. She tested his limits, pushing him to see how far he could go without breaking. One afternoon, as they sat together in the common room, Lyra asked John how he was adjusting. She had a way of speaking that made him feel like he could tell her anything. "How do you feel?" she asked, her green eyes studying him carefully. John thought for a moment before answering. "I feel confused. I mean, everything is so different now. I never expected this. I never thought I'd be part of something like this. And now here I am, with two alien wives. I don't know what to make of it." Lyra smiled, her eyes full of understanding. "It's okay to feel confused. Change is never easy, especially when it comes so quickly. But you're not alone in this. Elia and I are here for you, and together we'll learn how to make this work." Elia, who had been sitting in the corner, overheard their conversation. She stood up, her expression serious. "Don't expect it to be easy, John. We didn't choose this either. The core made its decision, and now we have to deal with it. But don't think that we'll just be here for you when you need us. We have our own needs too. And if you're not ready to handle that, then you might want to reconsider this whole thing." John looked at Elia, his heart pounding. Her words were harsh, but they weren't untrue. He had been so focused on his own confusion that he hadn't fully considered the needs of Lyra and Elia. They had been thrust into this just as much as he had, and their lives had been altered forever. "I'm ready," he said quietly, his voice steady. "I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm ready to try. We'll make this work. I'll do my part." Lyra smiled at him, a gentle look of approval crossing her face. Elia, however, gave him a scrutinizing look before turning away, her golden skin shimmering as she moved. Over the next few days, John began to learn more about Lyra and Elia. Lyra, despite her quiet demeanor, had a deep wisdom about her. She was patient, always willing to explain things when John had questions. Elia, on the other hand, was unpredictable, often challenging him to push past his comfort zones. But John began to see that beneath her tough exterior, Elia cared deeply for him. In her own way, she was trying to protect him from the harsh realities of their new life. As John spent more time with them, he started to notice the subtle differences between the two women. Lyra's empathy made her a calming presence, while Elia's fiery energy drove him to be more resilient. It was a delicate balance, and John wasn't sure how he was managing it, but something inside him told him that this was exactly where he needed to be. He had been chosen for a reason, and whether he was ready or not, this was his new life now. But as the days went on, something began to change. The bond between them, John, Lyra, and Elia, wasn't just about survival anymore. There was something more, something deeper, forming between them. And no matter how much John tried to deny it, he couldn't ignore it. He was falling into this new life, and the journey they were about to embark on was just beginning. Bonding and struggles. The days blurred together as John, Lyra, and Elia began their new lives on the space station. The initial awkwardness started to fade, but it was replaced by a different kind of challenge. John wasn't just adjusting to the idea of having two alien wives. He was trying to understand how to live with them, how to build trust. and how to deal with the overwhelming emotional weight of the situation. Lyra's quiet presence became a comfort to him, but there was always a nagging feeling in the back of his mind. He had never been one for deep emotional connections, but Lyra was different. She could feel things that John didn't understand, could sense his thoughts before he even spoke. She always seemed to know when something was wrong, and her empathy made him feel vulnerable. One evening, as they sat in the common room, Lyra looked at him with those soft green eyes of hers. "John, I know this is difficult for you. It's difficult for both of us. But we can't keep pretending like we're not affected by all of this. The bond is forming, whether we want it to or not." John glanced away, his mind racing. "I don't know if I can do this. I never asked for any of this. I don't know how to be with you, with both of you. I don't even know what's real anymore." Lyra's hand gently touched his arm, her fingers warm against his skin. "It's okay to feel lost. You're not alone in this. Elia and I are here with you, and together we can make this work. But we have to be honest with each other, John. If we're going to be together, we have to trust each other." John felt her words weigh on him, but the truth was, he wasn't sure if he could trust anyone, even Lyra. She was kind, yes, but she was also part of this strange experiment, this mission that he didn't fully understand. And then there was Elia. She was a force, unpredictable, always pushing his limits, always challenging him. It felt like she was testing him, to see how far he could be pushed before he cracked. But despite their differences, there was something undeniable between them. Something that John couldn't quite explain, but that was growing stronger with each passing day. When he looked at Lyra, he saw a partner, someone who understood him in a way that no one else ever had. But when he looked at Elia, it was like staring into the heart of a storm. She was wild, untamed, and yet there was a raw honesty in her that made him feel alive. The tension between the three of them began to shift. Elia, though fiercely independent, started to soften. Her challenges were no longer about pushing John to his limits for the sake of it. There was a purpose behind her actions now. She was testing him, yes, but she was also trying to understand him, to see if he could be the man she needed him to be. One night, as John sat with Elia in the training room, he found himself unable to focus. The harsh lights above made the room feel cold and sterile, and the silence between them was thick with unspoken words. Elia had been pushing him harder than usual during their training sessions, trying to build his strength and resilience. But tonight, she wasn't focused on his body. She was watching him, studying him, as if she were searching for something inside of him. "Why do you keep holding back?" Elia asked suddenly, her voice sharp. "You're capable of more, John. I can see it, but you're scared. Why?" John stiffened, his heart racing. He didn't want to admit it, but he knew she was right. He was scared. Scared of the unknown, scared of his feelings for her and for Lyra, scared of being controlled by the core and its plans. But most of all, he was scared of failing, of not being good enough for them, of letting them down. "I don't know how to do this," he said quietly, looking down at his hands. I'm not built for this, for all of this. I don't know if I'm strong enough to be the person you want me to be." Elia's expression softened, and for a moment, John saw a different side of her. The fierce, demanding alien was still there, but underneath that exterior, he could see vulnerability. She stepped closer to him, her golden eyes softening as she spoke. "You don't have to be perfect, John. We don't need you to be perfect. We need you to be real, to be with us, to trust us. We're in this together, all of us. And together, we can handle anything that comes our way. But you have to stop holding back. You have to stop running from what's in front of you." John looked at her then, really looked at her. He saw the fire in her eyes, the passion that had always been there, and something inside of him clicked. He had been running from this, from them, from the situation. He had been too afraid to let himself fully fall into the chaos that had become his life. But maybe, just maybe, he didn't need to run anymore. Maybe he could embrace it. "I'm sorry," John whispered, his voice full of emotion. "I've been scared, but I'll try. I'll try to trust you, both of you. I'll try to stop holding back." Elia nodded, a small smile tugging at the corner of her lips. "Good. That's all I needed to hear." The next few days were a turning point for the three of them. As John began to open up more, Lyra and Elia began to meet him halfway. The tension between them didn't disappear, but it shifted. They started to understand each other more, to find a rhythm in their shared lives. John's fears didn't vanish, but he learned to face them head-on, with Lyra and Elia by his side. One evening, as they sat around the table, eating together in the common room, John looked at both women. He still wasn't sure what the future held, but in that moment, he realized something important. They weren't just two alien wives sent to help him reproduce. They were partners, equals. They were his family now, and he was theirs. For the first time since arriving, John felt a sense of belonging. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't easy, but it was real. And that was all he needed to move forward. The journey ahead would not be easy. The Corps' plans, the uncertainty of the galaxy, and the complex bond between the three of them would continue to test them. But John knew one thing for sure: he wasn't alone anymore. And no matter what came next, he would face it with Lyra. And Elia by his side, not an unexpected threat. The peace that John, Lyra, and Elia had begun to build together was short-lived. It didn't take long for their quiet life on the space station to be interrupted. The Corps, the eye that had orchestrated their union, had a new challenge for them. A warning signal from a distant part of the galaxy came through the station's communication system one fateful night, just as John was getting used to their new routine. John sat at the control console, his fingers hovering over the buttons. As the strange, garbled signal filled the room, Lyra stood beside him, her eyes narrowed as she tried to make sense of the message. Elia, always impatient, paced the room, her golden skin shimmering under the artificial lights as her sharp gaze flicked to the screen. "What is this?" John asked, his voice filled with confusion and worry. "Is it a distress call?" Lyra's voice was calm, but there was a tension in it that John hadn't heard before. "It's not a distress call, not exactly. It's a warning about something coming our way." Elia stopped pacing and turned to them both, her expression hardening. "Something dangerous, I bet. This isn't just some random signal. Whoever sent it is preparing for something." John's heart raced. He had barely started to understand this new life he was building, and now, just when things were beginning to feel right, everything was turning upside down again. He had no idea what kind of threat they were facing, but one thing was certain: the calm days they had enjoyed were about to end. Lyra turned back to the console, her fingers moving swiftly over the controls as she tried to decode the signal. After a few moments, she looked up, her face pale. "It's not just one ship. There's an entire fleet approaching." John felt the weight of her words settle over him. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. A fleet? Why hadn't the AI warned them about this? What kind of danger were they in? Elia's voice cut through the tension. "We need to act fast. If this is a threat, we can't just sit around and wait for it to reach us." John looked between Lyra and Elia, trying to process everything. They were in danger, and there was no time to waste. But there was something about the way Elia spoke that made him feel both reassured and nervous. She was always ready for action, always prepared to face anything head-on. But was he? "What do we do now?" John asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "We prepare," Elia said, her tone firm. "The Corps didn't give us this information. Just to sit back and wait. It's time to take control of our situation." John nodded, trying to steady his thoughts. He had never been in a situation like this before. He had never been a fighter, never had to face down an enemy. But now, For the first time in his life, he knew he couldn't sit back and let everything slip away. He had to be strong for himself. And for the two women who had become so important to him, the next few hours were a wind of action. They gathered supplies, worked with the station systems to prepare for any kind of attack, and reinforced their quarters. Lyra, with her calm demeanor, focused on the technical aspects of their defense, while Elia took the lead in organizing. Their strategy. John, caught between the two, followed their guidance, doing everything he could to help. Despite the urgency of the situation, John couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. The core had always been in control, always had the answers, but now it felt as though the AI was holding back something. He couldn't put his finger on it, but there was a sense that the core was not telling them everything. Why hadn't they been warned about this fleet earlier? Was it really as simple as a rogue group of aliens, or was something more sinister going on? As the hours passed, the fleet grew closer. The signals from the approaching ships became clearer, and John could feel the tension building. Elia's impatience was palpable. She was ready for a fight, but Lyra remained more cautious, her focus on ensuring they had everything they needed to survive. Finally, the first sight of the fleet appeared on the station's sensors. A vast, menacing group of ships, each one larger and more advanced than anything John had ever seen. The alien ships were unlike anything he had imagined. Their sleek, dark designs were nothing like human vessels. They seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, their surface textures shifting and changing as though they were alive. The ships moved in perfect formation, a chilling display of power and unity. "Prepare yourselves," Lyra said, her voice calm but filled with determination. "This is it. Whatever happens, we face it together." John nodded, his heart pounding in his chest. He had never felt so vulnerable, so out of his depth. But he knew that Lyra and Elia were right. They were in this together. And whatever happened, they would have to face it as a team. The fleet was getting closer now, and the station's defense systems were ready. The core had granted them the necessary tools to fight back, but John knew that their survival depended not just on the weapons they had, but on their ability to work together and stay calm under pressure. As the ships neared, a voice crackled over the station's comms system. It was not the familiar voice of the core, but something else, something alien. The voice was cold, distant, and filled with a quiet menace. "Humans," the voice said, "we have come to claim what is ours. Surrender, and your suffering will be swift. Resist, and you will all perish." John's stomach churned. He knew this was coming, but hearing it spoken aloud made it feel real. The threat wasn't just some distant idea, it was happening now. And there was nothing they could do but face it head on. Elia stepped forward, her eyes blazing with fury. "They want to fight? We'll give them one they'll never forget." John felt his pulse quicken. Elia was ready, but was he? Lyra stood by his side, her calm presence grounding him. "We're ready for this," she said softly, "but we need to be smart. They have the numbers, but we have something they don't each. Other." John took a deep breath, his fear slowly being replaced by something else, something he hadn't felt before. Courage. For the first time, he wasn't just a pawn in someone else's game. He was a part of something bigger. And together, they would fight. The battle for their lives and for humanity's future was about to begin. The final choice. The tension was unbearable as the alien fleet loomed closer. John stood at the control panel, his eyes fixed on the rapidly approaching ships. He could feel the weight of everything pressing down on him, the lives of Lyra, Elia, and humanity itself. The battle was coming, and there was no turning back now. Elia stood beside him, her posture tense, her golden skin almost glowing in the dim light. Her eyes were fixed on the view outside, her expression fierce and determined. "We don't have much time," she said, her voice low but filled with conviction. "We have to make our stand now." John nodded, his heart pounding in his chest. He had never been a soldier. He wasn't trained for this. But he knew one thing for sure: they couldn't just sit back and wait for the enemy to strike. They had to fight for their lives and for the future of humanity. Lyra, ever calm and composed, was working swiftly alongside him, her hands moving over the control panel as she prepared the station's defenses. "We need to disable their weapon systems first," she said quietly, her voice steady despite the danger surrounding them. "If we can do that, we might have a chance." John wasn't sure how it was all going to play out, but with Lyra and Elia by his side, he felt a strange sense of hope. They had become more than just his wives. They were his partners, his equals, and together, they were stronger than he had ever been on his own. The alien ships finally arrived, their dark, sleek forms filling the space around the station. Enemy fleet was immense, more ships than John could count, all moving with terrifying precision. John's heart raced as he stared at the screen. It felt like they were staring down the barrel of a weapon that was about to fire. Then the guns crackled, and the same cold, menacing voice filled the room. "Humans," it said, "you have been warned. Surrender now, or face your extinction." John clenched his fists. He wasn't going to give in. Not now, not ever. The Corps had put them in this situation, and now it was up to him, Lyra, and Elia to take control of their fate. There was no room for fear, no time for hesitation. It was time to fight. Elia turned to him, her eyes burning with determination. "They want us to surrender, but we won't. We fight or we die, together." John nodded, his fear melting away as he realized that this was their moment. He wasn't alone anymore. He wasn't just a participant in some grand experiment. He was a man standing with the people who mattered most to him, and together they would face whatever came their way. Lyra's voice interrupted his thoughts. "We're ready," she said, her hand gently resting on his shoulder. "The first wave of defense is set. Let's show them what we're made of." John didn't hesitate. He turned to the console, his fingers moving swiftly over the controls. He launched the station's counterattack, firing pulses of energy at the incoming fleet. The alien ships retaliated, but John could see the damage they were inflicting. The first wave of fire didn't just push them back, it crippled a few of their ships. It wasn't enough to defeat them, but it was a start. Elia let out a sharp laugh, her eyes flashing with excitement. "Good shot, John. Let's keep them on their toes." But John knew that the first round was just the beginning. They couldn't rely on just firepower. They needed to outsmart the enemy. And that's where Lyra's calm intelligence and Elia's fiery spirit came in. Together, they had a strategy that could turn the tide. As the battle raged on, John began to realize just how much he had changed. He wasn't the same man who had been confused and scared when he first arrived at the space station. He had found his strength in Lyra and Elia, and in return, he had helped them find theirs. They were a team now, and there was no stopping them. But the battle wasn't over. The alien fleet was relentless, and their ships were more advanced than anything John had ever imagined. They fought back harder than ever, launching waves of energy blasts that shook the station. John could feel the vibrations beneath his feet, the sense of danger rising with each passing second. "This isn't working," Lyra said, her voice urgent. "We need to hit their command ship. If we destroy their leader, the rest of the fleet will fall apart." John nodded, his mind racing. "How do we get there?" Elia stepped forward, her eyes alight. "With determination, we go in close. We have to get past their defenses and take out the command ship before it's too late." Lyra glanced at Elia, a rare smile crossing her face. "It's a risky move, but it might be our only shot." John didn't have time to think. He trusted Lyra and Elia. He had to. Without hesitation, he set the course for the alien command ship. The station rocked under another wave of fire, but they pressed on, moving closer to the heart of the enemy fleet. As they approached the command ship, John felt the weight of everything. They had been through settle-in. They were in the final stretch now. If they failed, everything they had fought for would be lost. But if they succeeded, they could change the course of history. Now, Elia said, her voice sharp with anticipation. Let's finish this. John hit the button, launching a full assault on the command ship. The energy blasts hit their target, and for a moment, everything seemed to stop. The alien fleet faltered, their coordinated movements slowing as their leadership was crippled. We did it, Lyra cried out, her voice filled with relief. But the battle wasn't quite over. The alien ships began to scatter, but there were still pockets of resistance. The war wasn't over yet, but they had made their mark. Together, they had struck a decisive blow. John looked at Lyra and Elia, his heart swelling with pride. They had done it. They had fought back and won. Against all odds, they had defeated an enemy that had seemed unbeatable. As the last of the alien ships retreated into the depths of space, John felt a wave of exhaustion wash over him. The battle was won, but the war was far from over. There would be more challenges ahead, more battles to fight. But for now, they had proven something important: that humanity, with its strength, its determination, and its bonds, could stand against anything the galaxy threw their way. Together, they had forged a new path. A path they would walk together, side by side, as partners in the fight for humanity's future.